I did not expect to be making another video on this topic in a year. Really, I just did this video a year ago, but here we are. If you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you would have heard the news by now that I recently quit my job at Wealthsimple. Now, before I get into all the reasons on why I left this job, maybe just starting with a little bit of backstory. I started my career as a product designer at Uber, worked there for 4 years, eventually left in about June of 2021. And I made a whole video here on the reasons why I left Uber and answering all of your questions about that decision. But essentially, I then joined a company here in Canada called Wealthsimple. And I joined Wealthsimple as a senior product designer. So it was sort of a promotion for me because I wasn't yet senior at Uber. It felt like my growth there was stagnating, so I was really excited about this jump to a Canadian company and to a new level. You'll have heard in that video that I was really looking forward to a more local company, a company that was a lot smaller than what I was used to at Uber. I was really looking forward to working in a place where I could have more influence, more impact, get to know everyone personally, know all the names of people on my team, and just ultimately feel a little bit more like part of the company. At the end of this video, I'm going to share where I'm joining next, which I'm really excited about, so stay tuned for that. But first, let's talk about my initial experiences at Wealthsimple. I did release a video about 3 months after joining Wealthsimple, kind of sharing my expectations, my reflections so far, how that compared to Uber, and overall how I was feeling about this new role. I remember being so excited to join the team. They were working on this mammoth initiative of kind of unifying all of their apps into one app and creating one product, Wealthsimple, and I was so excited to join and be part of that initiative. The design team was so welcoming, everybody was so kind, I got to know everybody by name, and in the beginning when I first joined, we were small enough that we would have crits all together as a design team because we were that small, and I really loved that smaller size team. I hopped around a few teams in my first few months and ultimately landed on the platform team where I worked on platform, product kind of ecosystem initiatives and also contributed a little bit to the design system. And if you want to see some of the work that I contributed during my time there, I have a case study here where I walk through one of my projects at Wealthsimple. So let's get into the reasons why I left. The first major reason is that in June of 2022, Wealthsimple did go through a round of layoffs, and unfortunately this affected the design team pretty badly. We ended up losing our entire UX research discipline, and our entire content discipline was either let go or eventually left as well. And this was really hard for us as a design team to overcome and to move forward. We mourned the loss of our friends and colleagues, and we felt like we'd lost two really important parts of the design discipline, and we struggled to figure out how to move forward as a team with this enormous loss. What ended up happening after the layoffs is that people started leaving. So more and more of my friends and my colleagues decided to leave the company, and it kind of got to the point where I saw all of my friends leaving and all of these really smart people leaving, and it caused me to kind of ask myself and question, well, why am I here? Like, what am I getting out of this? Being here at this company is a choice that I made, and am I still getting out of it what I want to get out of it? Does this still align with where I want to go and how I want to grow as a designer? You know, it's a turning point in a company going through layoffs, and I think it's a chance to ask yourself if you still want to be here. Eventually, it got down to the point where I was the only designer left on my immediate team because everyone else had left. The researcher was gone, the content designer was gone, the other designer was gone, and so it was just me. And it sucks being in that position when all of your friends are gone and you're the only designer left on your team. And I was struggling with that. I really was. And even though we were trying to hire back, like for some of those roles, we had backfills open for those positions. Hiring takes a lot of time, and yeah, I just kind of got a little bit lonely, and I couldn't really get over the loss of my friends. Another thing that contributed to this decision was manager turnover. So in my little over a year at Wealthsimple, I ended up going through 4 different managers. Now, I had the same experience in my last year at Uber as well, where I went through 4 different managers in a year. So in the last 2 years, I've had around 8 managers or so. I've honestly lost count. But this is really hard when you're trying to grow and you have goals as a designer and you're constantly switching managers every quarter, essentially. You know, it was really disruptive because there was was either like org changes, like reorgs or structural changes that were contributing to this shifting around. I was moving around, managers were moving around, people were quitting, new people were joining. And so there was just always a lot of change and a lot of shuffle. And after experiencing that for like 2 years in a row, I was kind of getting a little bit over it and sort of looking for a little bit more stability in this phase of my career. You would have heard me talk in the previous videos a lot about how I really wanted to have more influence and sort of impact joining Wealthsimple. And I feel like my expectations for what that would look like didn't quite align with the reality of the environment or the stage of growth that Wealthsimple was in. I was so excited joining Wealthsimple to take the things I had learned at Uber and have the opportunity to apply them in some way to the Wealthsimple environment. I feel like I'd had a lot of interesting learnings. I had a lot of ideas around process and team rituals and templates and ways of working that, you know, I'd built up this sort of bank in my head and in my experience of different ways we could do things. And I was really excited to bring that to Wealthsimple and like offer that and apply that to my team or to the context within that I was working in. But what I quickly realized was that in order to have that influence, have that impact, there needs to be this like foundation level of trust and respect for the design discipline. So design, product, engineering, all the cross-functional partners need to be just that, partners. There needs to be this existing partnership, and the company needs to be invested in the value that design can bring to the company and understand what the role of design is. And I found that this foundation didn't exist to the level that I was expecting coming in the door. So I was expecting to have a lot more autonomy than what I was given. I was expecting to be able to have more influence, more impact, but it's hard to talk about doing something or impacting something when the person across the table from you doesn't understand what design does. And they sort of just see design as a, you know, function that just executes on the work, and you create the designs and then you're good to go and it's all done and it's all over. Whereas I saw design as a strategic partner involved in the entire product development process from start to end, not just sort of when the product solution is already decided upon and then just given to a designer to actually execute on, essentially. So it felt like whenever I tried to propose something, it kind of fell on deaf ears a little bit, and that kind of ended up leading me into the next reason I decided to leave, which was because I wasn't feeling challenged and I didn't find the work exciting, and I didn't find the environment stimulating enough for me and my growth and where I wanted to go and develop as a designer. So in the end, I didn't end up shipping as much as I expected to ship. I was also really used to working on these big, complex, like hairy problems that I was used to working on at Uber, often like 0 to 1 products, like brand new initiatives or bringing in a whole new product into an existing ecosystem. And the work at Wealthsimple wasn't really like that. It wasn't as challenging for me. It wasn't as exciting. It was a lot more like tactical, like, oh, we need this feature. Like, here's the solution-oriented brief. Can you just design it? And so I didn't feel like I was able to influence the product, influence the strategy in the ways that I really wanted to. And I felt like my creativity was also kind of being held back a little bit because we didn't have the time, resources, scope to think outside the box and to push our ideas further. So yeah, I was disappointed at times when I was sort of brought in to just like execute on a solution-oriented brief rather than consulted at the very beginning inception, you know, moment of a idea. And you know, I would love to have influence at that point in the process and be a strategic partner to product and figure out how do we solve this problem and what's the goal, and there's so much potential here, how do we want to approach this? But instead it was very much like we've already decided all of that and just go and like execute on the work. And so that was a real 180 for me coming from Uber, where you are a lot more involved in that early stage strategic product kind of decision making. And I tried to challenge it. I tried to involve myself as much as I could at that early stages, but it just ultimately wasn't working out the way that I wanted it to. So at the end of the day, I kind of felt like I was picking up bad habits along the way. My design process was getting a little bit lazy, and the environment I was in just didn't align with the environment I wanted to be in at that stage in my career. Quitting your job can be really hard. I did not make this decision lightly. It took basically all of my friends leaving for me to eventually leave. I was almost kind of like the last one standing. And I probably went back and forth about the decision for about 2 months before really deciding that it was my time to go. And even deciding to go took me time to process. I wrote a pros and cons list. I thought about what I wanted to get out of this job and this opportunity, and if the possibility was still there for me to get those things. I thought about, where do I want to go in the future? Does this job align with that? Is this taking me on the right path, on the right trajectory to get to that end goal? And for me, I'm really someone who, if I'm in, I want to be all in. So I didn't want to be like half in, half out, because I felt like that wasn't fair to the team or the company. And so when I had to really ask myself, like, am I all in? Do I want to stay here? Do I want to give my all to this team and to this company? The answer at the end of the day was no. And so that's really when I knew it was time to move on and time to start exploring different opportunities. I kind of realized that eventually I had nothing to lose if I just tapped into my network and kind of reached out to a few folks here and there to see who was hiring. I kind of take on the philosophy of like, you already have a no, but you might get a yes. And like, you don't have to take an opportunity just because you're interviewing doesn't necessarily mean you are quitting. And so I thought I'll just see what's out there and see what comes back. And especially as someone who was wanting to go into management and leadership, now I'm like spoiling the next section, I thought I would try to see what I could get in that level as well. So where am I going next? Well, after interviewing around a little bit, I'm really excited to say that I am joining Gusto as a design manager. Yes, moving out of IC work and stepping onto the management track. This has been a personal sort of growth goal of mine for a few years. Even when I was at Uber, we were talking about me maybe moving into management one day, and I've kind of been taking on opportunities and working on initiatives that would help kind of set me up for this next step in my career. I'm really excited about Gusto. They do payroll and HR software, and it's going to be remote. I'm going to stay here in Canada. Most of the team is in the US, but a few folks are in Canada as well. And I'm really excited to be taking on this new chapter in my career. I'll be joining the app ecosystem team, so continuing to work sort of on platform level stuff. So some of the stuff I did at Wealthsimple was going to be, really valuable for the work that I'm going to be doing at Gusto. And I'm really excited to try out this size and stage of company. I feel like with Wealthsimple, I swung the pendulum maybe like a little bit too far into like early stage company. And Gusto, I feel, is a nice in-between between Wealthsimple and like large Uber size. So I'm really looking forward to this more mid-stage company of growth. And yeah, we'll see what the impact is that I can have there. So now that I'm moving into management, we'll see what that means for this channel. I might start creating more content on the sort of senior manager side. Who knows? If you think that would be interesting, let me know, but don't worry. I've got lots of videos planned up from now until the end of the year. I'm going to continue sharing some of the things I've learned and done as a senior IC, so stay tuned. I appreciate you so much for tuning into this video, whether you've been subscribed to my channel for a while or maybe you stumbled upon this video somehow. And if you like this content and like the channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in a future video. Bye, friend.